Okay, everybody, I think we should be live. If I cut in a really like weird way, then I'll know that that's not been. Please just let me know, of course, that the audio is doing fine, so that I can relax my nerves, which are rattled, completely rattled today. The topic that I'm going to be talking about while I'm kind of painting this image is going to be distraction, and it is completely just appropriate to what I've been dealing with today. Just nonstop, like paperwork here, emailing there. I think that, like, honestly, for me, one of probably the absolute most challenging things without any competition is just getting through life as an artist and finding time at your easel because, and I've said this to students a lot, I've said it a lot over the years, but like I feel like there's just nothing out there, nothing in the world, in the real world, right, that like wants you to sit down at your canvas and actually like make a painting. Almost everything there is like designed to take you away from like slow focused activities. And so I this is like me revolting against what is happening in my day where just so many hours of it are kind of taken up with, I don't want to say nonsense, but come on, like, emails and this and that, right? So a lot of you have said that the audio is doing fine, and I'm just gonna dive into painting this picture. And let me assure you that more than any other live stream I've done on YouTube, this one has the absolute best opportunity to become a totally unmitigated disaster because I do not paint quickly. So let me just start making like pre-excuses for myself and just kind of dive in and see what comes. So everybody says the audio is great, and Victor Adolfo on YouTube is saying the revolution or the revolt has begun. Absolutely. And hello, by the way, to all the Patreon subscribers that are watching, and everybody who's not on Patreon as well. That's great. Real quick off the top, something to mention would be that the second installment of the Atelier tier is coming up June 1st, and I'm going to be getting into something that we all probably know a little bit. But I'm going to be getting into the Belvedere torso and, going through that with all of you. We're going to be kind of going from the block in all the way to like the final, fully realized drawing. And I'm really kind of excited to share with everybody, mostly because like I think it's such an intimidating project to kind of get into. And I'm excited to kind of share that with, share that pain and anxiety with with all of you as well. Um, right, so I don't want to miss any of the comments coming in, and yeah. By the way, of course, if you have your particular story about the frustration that you have with being distracted from your studying or your painting or just your life in general, like just your ability to like focus and relax, all of these things kind of fall into that category. But I'll be prioritizing questions about that. Or alternatively, I'm just gonna be like rambling to myself for like ages and ages about about how I'm distracted, and maybe hopefully it just doesn't come off as like me complaining to all of you about how I feel distracted. That would be the worst case scenario. By the way, I'm blocking this in oil paint. I bought some rosemary brushes recently. I don't know if any of you out there are using those, but I think they're pretty all right. I think these are the ones that they do that are like kind of synthetic sables. They're synthetic solution to sable, which yeah seems to perform pretty good. So we'll see on the stream like how that goes. And I'm just blocking in with kind of rough color here, like a rough like kind of shadow, skin tone, that kind of thing. Um, Oh yeah, by the way, also for all of you watching on YouTube, and maybe you're not a Patreon subscriber already, just FYI, you can get a high-res download of this source image on the link that's in the description of this video. So it's totally free, like no strings attached. You can just go to that link and go to the bottom of that post and just download it, and yeah, and you'll be there. So good. So I'm just going to mix up some rough kind of skin tones here with my brush. I'm going to brush mix the whole way through. You know, interesting thing with this one is that like it's such a cool. I don't think I'm actually gonna be able to get to like the coolness of the temperature of this portrait. I just don't. I don't think that's in the cards necessarily. Like doing an alla prima painting and doing it on like a background like this, which is uh, which is really really warm already. I think I'm gonna have a lot of difficulty kind of getting to the kind of level of coolness that is present there. But I'm gonna do my best. You know, we'll see what happens. You know, like I said, I don't normally paint kind of fast at all. So this is gonna be me really winging it. And for you know, I know it's probably frustrating like watching on YouTube, like 'cause I'm not at all like a fast painter. You know, and I know that you know YouTube and social media and things where you know there's places where everybody's supposed to be, you know, the painting is supposed to happen in 5 minutes or whatever, and you know that's just never been the case for me. But hey, you know, what are you gonna do? Right, let's see. I think there's some questions coming in, and let's see if any of them are about distraction. Ribeiro says, I'm always distracted by the fact that I suck at drawing. Now, you know, whether or not this is 100% true that you actually suck at drawing, Ribeiro, I actually think it's kind of an interesting comment in the sense that I also kind of remember going through that thing where starting out as a drawing student, I think actually like one of the reasons it is really hard is that you do suck at the start. Like I was, you know, like when I look back at my earlier drawings, you know, I definitely get that sense that wow, you know, like had a lot to learn, had a long trajectory of kind of learning to go before I could actually do anything, you know, particularly useful with a pencil or with a paintbrush. So, you know, and doing that. Speaking of distraction, I feel like yeah, like it's a kind of distraction that you know you can see like how far your work has to go, and you're obviously not there, but you can like see that that's the case. Like it really becomes easy to want to like put down your brushes, and I'm sure like all of you know what I'm talking about out there is that sense of frustration in that you know you know what's wrong or you know that something's wrong, but you can't really pin it down and you don't really know like how to fix it. You're not really capable of doing that yet. And of course like that's a kind of frustration or sorry, a kind of distraction. Now it's different of course than the distraction that you face like I was doing today with like taxes and like emails and like contract language and like you name it. And I think you know the cool thing is that like maybe for all of you out there, some of you are professionals, some of you are students or whatever. You know, we all have the same like kind of cross to bear in that respect. You know, and it's a kind of a maybe a thing that can like bring us together a little bit. Is that we're all in the same boat as far as like I said, the world doesn't make a lot of opportunities for you to like sit down and focus this way. It's something you really have to like effort for. You really have to like work on finding that time, you know, and it's a battle, it's a struggle. I mean, I was lucky enough that at least I went to art school, you know, or you know, to an atelier eventually. And that kind of, you know, creates that barrier for you. Like, you know, I paid tuition and so, you know, I was naturally going to go to my classes. I was going to make that time to paint. Like I had paid for that time to paint. And like I think again, you know, that's something that for all of you online students, I know that if you're coming from my Patreon, you know, you're out there like studying and trying to learn this stuff online. And you know, you're the biggest disadvantage for you, the toughest thing I think is that you know, online learning doesn't have that boundary, you know? Like there's always some way that you can be distracted from it. There's some, you know, I don't know, you got family there, you got some outing, your friends want to like go out or do whatever. Like there's always some of the thing. It's kind of hard to say like, oh no, I can't. I'm online studying. Like it's a little bit of a tougher kind of, you know, excuse or like a way to kind of get out of something. Victor Adolfo says, personally, I think I got an obsessive personality. Last year, I got addicted to online games. It wasn't until I found your Patreon that I was able to quit. So thanks. You're helping more than you know. So maybe Maybe I'm the distraction from online gaming addiction. I could. That's I'll happily perform that, play that role. Um, yeah. So this, by the way, yeah, this head, like I said, that I'm painting is going to be a disaster. That's I think just how it's going to work. I don't want to like speak it into being or anything, but there's a very good chance that it's not going to come out the way that I want to. So maybe this is like part of the distraction episode. Is sometimes you just gotta like bite the bullet and do what you're able to do. Like this is what I'm able to do with the time that I have, and I'm just gonna like live with it and kind of do the most I can with what I've got. Because it's not. I'd love to say that I became a professional, and then like all my time is available to me just to paint, but it's just, man, it's just totally not true. I wish it was, but that is not the world I'm living in. On a positive note, a more positive note, some of the distraction that I've had in the last week or so was planting strawberries. So for whatever it's worth, that was a good distraction. JD Anarchy says, speaking of distraction, my 4-year-old wants attention now. That's exactly what I'm talking about, JD. That sense of yeah, like there's always some kind of important. By the way, it's not to say that all distractions are just like nonsense. I mean, some of them are like totally legit. I mean, we all have like families, and we all have, probably most of us have like some kind of job. We have to like earn a living. So all these distractions are really real. But I beat myself up about it. Like I don't actually like give myself credit for the time that I like, the effort that I do spend. I'm always just thinking about the time that I'm not spending, the time that I could have spent, right, to do this. And that's not like, obviously not like fair to me. It kind of sucks. I feel bad about it eventually. Um, so yeah, like there's a lot of like weird stuff kind of wrapped up in it, and I think everybody deals with it differently. I think over the years, maybe I've gotten a little bit better. I maybe a little bit of a tendency to, and this is like, I don't want to be like at a job interview, like we're one of those people who are like, tell us what your weakness is, and I go, oh, I'm a perfectionist. but but like I'm a little bit of a workaholic. Like I kind of yeah, like I'll really prioritize work over a lot of things, and over the years maybe I've gotten slightly better about like actually giving some time to like other parts of my life. Which obviously is it's a good thing, it's a necessary thing. It doesn't seem necessary when you're like a teenager or whatever. Like when I was in my 20s, I would have just said like, all I want to do is just like paint. That's it. Like I don't want to do taxes. I don't want to look for a house. I don't want to I don't want to do any of this stuff. I just want to be out there painting, like making artwork, and if I can do that, then that'll be enough for me. And in general, I mean, it's in general it is like a lot of my life does revolve around painting, and I've made like great efforts to kind of make that the case, but it's not always so kind of cut and dry. It's not always so easy as that. Yeah. So other comments. Lineu Ribeiro says, in the sense that this feeling holds me back at times, and I think he's referring to his other comment. He's saying he's distracted by the fact that he sucks at drawing. Yeah, like yeah, like I mean that's what it is. It definitely does hold you back, and distraction is a form of like of holding you back, because really, if we had all of our time to focus, all of our attention, and all of our capacity to like think and focus, we're gonna suck a little bit less probably. I say actually a lot of times I mention in these live streams, I'm like, listen, like one of the things that I have to tell you in advance is that I'm really slow when I'm talking and painting. It's really hard actually to kind of keep those two parts of your brain active in the same moment, because usually when you're talking, it's engaging this other kind of part of you. And so I'm really slow. It really kind of holds me back because I'm not totally focused on that. But yeah, so by the way, like if this was, if I ever paint, or back in the day when I did paint alla prima, this would kind of be my approach. Try to start out in those mid tones and just get like a basic idea of the head blocked in. And if you can do that, in the first, 15 or 20 minutes, you have a chance to kind of go onward from there. You just want to like pay attention to maybe the major planes of the head and try not to like make distinctions. I talked about this in like a lot of my tutorials as well. Is try not to give yourself that space to say that, yeah, no, I'm just blocking it in now and I'm gonna choose the right kind of color and value later. You kind of have to do it in the moment, or I mean, it's like it's going to be most efficient if you do it in the moment. And so that's what I try and do when I'm painting like this. Is I just try to make sure that I'm not doing something that's going to make me go back and redo it afterwards. The eye sockets in this are going to be eye sockets for quite a while before I get to them actually looking like anything. If I get them looking like anything. We'll see. We'll see if that actually happens. It's been so long since I painted this way. I honestly, I wonder a little bit what's going to happen. Which is not a great way to go into a live stream, but here we are. Yeah, so Limo Art is saying, I know this isn't on topic, but what colors are you using? To be fair, it is all in my FAQs. If you go to the description of this video, you can find it all, but I'll rattle them off really quick here for you. This is Flake White, Old Holland's Yellow Brown, Vermilion Extra, Raw Umber, and Ivory Black. And I use just a little bit of linseed oil from a company called Chelsea Classical Studios. I plug it because it's run by a really great friend of mine, Brandon Soloff. And yeah, he's a cool guy, runs a company that gives like people really high quality oils, so I have no problem talking about that. Right, so Phyllis Riley says, my distraction is my sick dog. We can calmly listen and watch you. I'm probably your oldest patron at almost 75. I expected this to be my time to shine. LOL. Phyllis, happy to have you. I wonder actually if there is I don't have any demographic info that tells me how old my patrons are, so you very well could be the oldest. But if you feel like you are older, or you know that you're older, please let us know, and let's get some real demographic info about all you guys out there. But yeah, like, yeah, I mean, poor sick dog. That's so sad. I don't know, by the way, like another piece of demographic info I'd love to get is how many cat versus dog people are in the audience. Please let me know in the comments if you're a cat person or a dog person. And I will reveal exclusively later on in this live stream whether I'm a cat or dog person. And have a guess if you want. Let's see. Let's see. Jire Brian Dimalanta says, what do you do if your art career itself is the one that is distracting you from painting? Well, I mean, I gotta say, like, that's actually kind of what I'm dealing with, in a way. Like, a lot of the stuff, like I said, I chose this as a career, and that means that I do get to spend like a lot of my time, working on painting. However, it's not like to have it. And by the way, hey, art students out there, people that are hobbyists that are wanting to be professionals, let's get one thing straight, right? You are small business owners, and you have to think of a way to keep the lights on. And I think that the earlier that you embrace that, the earlier you kind of recognize and accept that, probably the better job you're going to do of kind of coping with that reality. So I just say, you don't have to like let business, take over your artistic endeavor, but I also wouldn't recommend, what I did when I was a student, which is just, you know, completely rejecting the idea and thinking that somehow I was going to get away with not doing any of that, right? That I was just going to paint and like that was going to be life. And I mean, I could have done that, but probably I wouldn't be able to, I don't know, do much of any. I mean, it's hard, you know, you got to make a living. Anyway, on to other topics. Um, oh, well, to answer Jira's question, I mean, what do you do about that? I think, you know, for me, thinking about business and art, one of the ideas that I found kind of helpful was just to consider, you know, I think like any business would, you know, what do you actually need for your business to keep running? Like what do you need, you know, time wise, money wise? Like create a budget and then see if like you can hit that budget basically with, you know, with your artwork. And if, I mean, if you start crunching the numbers and you go like, wow, you know, even if I sold every painting I made, I'm still not like making enough to get by, you know, and obviously, you know, being broke is can be a massive distraction. You know, then you got to kind of look at, I think, what a lot of artists eventually look at, which is, you know, you have to consider the idea of like multiple income streams. You know, like how are you going to supplement your income? A lot of artists do it through teaching. I do it through teaching. You know, I was lucky enough to, you know, just after I was a student, be hired on as a teacher and gain a lot of great experience. You know, working with different artists and like so many students over the years. You know, and I think that's, I mean, I don't know the artist honestly that doesn't teach in some way or other. Even people that are out there like, and we know they're doing great like with their artwork, they're also teaching. So I think that's one great kind of solution to that. It's just try to consider, you know, if it's not just your paintings, because also when you're a student, like putting a lot of pressure on your artwork to kind of perform in the market, I think that can be really difficult as well. You know, because yeah, like, you know, when I remember being a student, there was a one of my last cast paintings, right, that I did was of the it was always called like the Mask of the Jerome, but I don't think actually the sculpture was of Saint Jerome. So it's that's like a there's a word for that, isn't it? Like when something has the wrong. Anyway, but my point is, when I was working on that, I was in the Via Fratelli Bandiera studios at the school, and it was during a break actually, and the school's like head administrator came by and said, "Oh yeah, you know, we noticed this painting you were doing. We, you know, the staff and whatever, we really like it. We want to purchase it from you, and you know, for the school, like, you know, purchase it to kind of display as an example of good student work." The problem was, of course, that I wasn't finished with it, and so she left the studio, and I was like left there thinking, all right, well, I hope I don't mess it up. You know, like I'm still going to be painting on this. What happens if like I do a bad job of the rest of the painting and I'm, you know, and I mess it up? Are they still going to want to buy it? So put all this like pressure on the work. Now, I mean, eventually, who's to say whether it's good or bad? I finished the painting and it was fine, and you know, I'm happy to have it, you know, in the collection of the school. But I definitely felt that bite. I felt that pressure of, you know, don't mess this up. So I think if you put like that pressure to like earn with your artwork like really early on, it can be, you can risk to make that a kind of an impediment to your progress, you know. Anyway, just my 2 cents about kind of art and pressure there. Pressure can be, by the way, staying on topic, pressure can be a distraction, right? So speaking of distractions, how's this painting going? I think it's all right. I mean, this is the joy of kind of oil paint, is that you can get things kind of blocked in relatively fast. Like you don't have to like wait for your values to show up. You can kind of just dial it in and kind of make some nice brush strokes. You know, that's the other cool thing about painting, right? Is that you can kind of just, you can get away with a few brush strokes sometimes to kind of imply something where maybe that's a little bit more difficult with graphite. You know, I mean, there's ways, but painting is like implanted with that way. It's like the perfect medium for creating kind of shorthand solutions. Right. Let's see. Or if Sofer says, how do you get over the urge to go straight to the fun parts of the drawing, painting, and actually build them up properly? It's not distraction related, but maybe it is. I don't want to get distracted by the details. Actually, for me, I have to say that probably the fun part of painting actually is like I love blocking in works. And I don't want to say like that's I do love finishing works as well. But just to say, there are almost two kinds of painting that go on in a way. Like there's like the difficult part of painting and there's the easy part of painting. For me, I find that, painting the big forms actually is the easy part. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing early on where I'm just kind of getting the major shapes of the head to kind of lock in, that actually is the easy part for me. So or the fun part. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. How do I guess it's just practice, I guess I just like practice a lot to kind of focus on kind of big planes and things rather than kind of focusing on detail. But that's related also to like a lot of other stuff, like your whole kind of philosophy of painting. I mean, are you going to be, a photorealist painter? Are you going to be an impressionist painter? Like, what is your vibe, with respect to aesthetic? And then it kind of, I guess if you're like a hyper realist, it's probably really hard to stay away from the details, right? But that's not my path. Yeah. So I'm just trying to get that like cool shadow, maybe tiny, 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 slightly, slightly warm areas through here, and try and get the proportions in place as well. MJ Artwork says, I get distracted by watching your tutorials sometimes, and when the time comes that I face the easel, I get stuck. Like there's so much information. Yeah, like as a student, you can go through those periods of kind of overload where, there's so many. Like I used to get this with when Simona Dolce would come around and give me a critique on my work in Florence, is that like she would give me like so much new information, right? Like I'm painting that day and I'm like working and I'm like thinking what I'm gonna do, and then Simona comes and she gives you like this like 20-minute critique. And by the way, like this is like you get 2 critiques a day at school, so it's not. I mean, I know for online students, getting a 20-minute critique is like stop the world. Let's like just do that. That's great. But when you're getting like a lot of kind of critiques all the time, sometimes like you just need to like focus on your work. And there would be times where I'd feel like, oh, my head is a little bit full. Like I can't, like I'm actually being distracted by the feedback because I can't, like there's so much of it. Like I can't focus on just what I need to do because I have 100 different directions in my mind that I'm trying to go in. And I think for students that can be a challenge as well, which is like how do you focus on the right stuff at the right time, rather than, sometimes a critique can take you maybe a little bit too far forward, a little bit too much into the future. Let me see, I just got to grab a new brush, just slightly smaller brush. All right, by the way, like there's some people watching on Instagram as well. If you're watching on IG and you want to see that stuff in 4K, you want to see this this head made in 4K, you can go ahead and hop over to my YouTube channel. But for you YouTubers out there, I think there's a lot more comments coming in. JD Anarchy says, I've heard that some artists work better distracted, especially musicians, because it makes for better on-the-fly intuitive art. I mean, could you work better if you were distracted? I mean, I get you. I get that. What you're saying basically is that you're trying to kind of create a balance in between like overthinking something and I guess underthinking it. So yeah, like there's an extent to which I do feel like, and this is the cool thing about actually working alla prima, which is kind of what we're doing here, is that you don't have the time to like muck around with the details. Like you just need to get this thing working as fast as possible. There's no oh, I'm gonna do that in the next layer. There's no way around it. Like you just got to get it done, get it on the canvas. And so there is a value to that. I think that's, one of the things also that I tell my students is that, you kind of need to find a lot of what you need to know, like in the work. So, that there's that question that I get a lot about, drawing, which is like, when you're hatching, when you're like putting value on the paper and you're cross hatching, which direction do you hatch? And it's a fine question, like in a way. Maybe some of you like out there have that question in your mind, and I don't want to like shame you. I don't want to like question shame you. But I do want to say this, right? The answer to that question is so implicit. When you're working, it would take me longer to explain in the abstract than it would take for you to figure out in the time you spend doing a single drawing. So I do sometimes feel like, yeah, like sometimes overthinking things can be a distraction. It's true. I get that. That being said, if you're overthinking, is it better or worse than underthinking? I don't want to have to say which one. I mean, because I would almost rather somebody was overthinking something, because at least then they're kind of engaging with it cognitively, and they're giving it some deep thought. So yeah, I guess maybe also JD, like it's kind of different for students versus professionals. I think if you're a student, go the extra mile, overthink it a little bit, see where that takes you, rather than, like, students do this a lot. I did this as a student. Like everything, by the way, FYI, every single thing that I say, students do this a lot. Or not everything, but most things. It's because I did it, and I know, and I know that's the tendency that we have, and so I'm kind of bringing it up, not to, again, not to like shame anybody about it, but just to say, I know this is a thing that we do, and maybe it's not practical. But the thing I was going to mention, right, was I think students will a lot of times too early, believe that they have arrived. You never heard that saying that a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing? There are few places in which that is more applicable than for like art students, right? You learn like the first thing about drawing a shadow shape, or drawing a light shape or whatever, and all of a sudden, all of a sudden you've got it all figured out. You don't need feedback anymore. It's time to make, we all get in this thing where we go, it's time to make real artwork and stuff. And maybe it is, by the way. I don't want to come down as like the heavy on this, but in general, you want to keep that attitude of like, there's always kind of more that I could figure out. There's always like another level that I can get to. If not technically, then yeah, I mean, well, even technically, I'm still growing as an artist. I'm still like learning new techniques and stuff that I didn't know before, and kind of trying to benefit from just keeping that humble mentality of kind of always wanting to learn, always wanted to push just a little bit further, figure out something that I didn't know. Right. So this head's looking nice and mushy, and has every opportunity to still become like a total disaster. So let's see where that goes. Let's see if there's more comments and questions coming in. Bipin Shrestha says, I do get distracted when learning to draw from books, where I choose one book to study from, and after a few sketches from that book, I get bored and abandon it for a new book. This, Bipin or Bipin, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but this is such a big deal. When you're like practicing, for instance, to learn to play the piano or something, right? You're practicing your scales. I know it's the same with guitar. I tried to learn guitar when I was a kid, and I had like no aptitude for it. I don't think I have any aptitude for music. I'm like an aptitude vacuum for musical ability. I don't have any rhythm whatsoever. But so yeah, like it's. But I know, like, I actually took a couple lessons when I was a kid. lessons about learning the piano, and I know like you play your scales to kind of learn, so I have this rudimentary knowledge of that. Now, the thing that that eventually you discover about like painting and drawing is that it's just like that in the sense that you need repetition. By the way, playing the scales is just like going back and forth on the keys like over and over and over until you kind of understand the position of them, and like they're kind of, that knowledge is kind of in your hands. You know, painting and drawing, like if you change up the variables, which basically that's what teachers are doing. There's like a lot of different ways to learn how to draw. You know, I take a very visual approach, less so probably than what I was educated in, you know, which was totally visual. But I like kind of a visual structural hybrid. And if you kind of go changing the variables of what you're trying to learn, like every time that you're trying to learn, you know, it's totally going to impede your progress. You know, I think again that's like one of the difficult things, you know, difficult crosses to bear for an online student especially, is that there's nothing like holding you off from like jumping over to the next idea. So you do need to have that kind of discipline to like stick with it, because there's nothing really out there forcing you to do that. Like you've got to kind of make that choice, and that kind of distraction, whew, that's tough. I mean, I totally get that. And I, you know, obviously, you know, I go through the same or have been through the same thing, you know, in terms of, you know, before I went to school, like I was just a kid out there like trying to figure out how to do this stuff. And yeah, you just jump from place to place. Oh, this looks cool today, maybe I'll try that. um you know, which by the way, just for plugging's sake, which is kind of why I'm putting out the Atelier tier right now, is just so that there's a kind of an all-in-one place. So, you know, I offer all these tutorials on like just making a portrait. Well, that's great, you know, and I think there's obviously I feel like there's a lot of value in those. But that being said, you know, there's so much run up to that that's important for you to know, and that's basically what the Atelier tier is kind of going through all of the foundational stuff that kind of leads up to then, like, you know, making proper portraits. Yeah, so I've got a nice lumpy head here blocked in. Looks fairly terrible, so that's good. We're right on schedule with respect to the head looking rough. Um, and I'm gonna see if I can get to some more questions in just a second. All right. Sam's Ranaz Arts says, I'm distracted because I always get something wrong in my likeness of a portrait, even though I use all the possible techniques that exist. What should I do? Something I talk about certainly in my teaching is that different stages have kind of different priorities, right? So a lot of times students will get very distracted by things like likeness, but they'll do it like I say it, I call it a distraction and not like a goal, because they're doing it generally at the wrong stages. So likeness for me is probably like one of the last things you really achieve in a painting. You know, most of your time is spent looking for structure, looking for form, looking for color, looking for value. And then, you know, likeness is I'm not going to say it's like the cherry on top, but it is the thing that everything else has to be working right for you to get to a place where likeness is possible. Right? So let's say your proportions are off. Well, then you're not going to get a likeness. Now, proportions are something related to like the first stage of a drawing. Like you should be solving your proportions, or a painting for that matter. You should be solving your proportions. That should be like the first thing that you're doing. So if in the early stages you say like you're being distracted by proportion, or sorry, distracted by likeness, yeah, it's because maybe you're not properly prioritizing like what to solve at what stage. And that comes with maybe a finer knowledge of actually proper stages of that a drawing or painting should be going through in order to get to a place where you're ready to kind of focus on likeness. So like I said, just remember, like, that's a thing that comes, that's the thing that comes like later on, is likeness. So I'd say just don't be distracted by that too early. I mean, in a way, like, all the stuff you're doing, of course, is meant to lead up to, you being able to focus on likeness. But it comes in stages, comes in waves, right? You could even like unpack likeness and say that actually, what is likeness made out of, right? So I mentioned proportions. You can also say that the value and the impression of the light has a lot to do with, the likeness or the appearance of the model. If you have your values all totally incorrect, you're unlikely to get a good sense of likeness, because your painting or your drawing is going to be like so far away from nature that it's not going to be really recognizable. So you're not going to get a likeness anyway. So focus on different things at different stages. Prioritize different things at different stages. Is her nose short? I feel like her nose is short. That's what I feel like is happening here. Like I said, we are on our way to total disaster here. So let's just ride the wave and see where it goes. Because I could easily see this tanking. And I'm okay with that. Because at the very least, I got to spend today doing a little bit of painting, and that makes me happy. One is asking, what's your favorite anime? Anime is my distraction. I haven't watched anime since like Akira, so I'm not the one to ask about that. Samir Khan says, while doing the grisaille, I always find the unblended strokes and patches very distracting. How do you deal with that? How do I get rid of the itch of fixing this while the paint is still fresh? Yeah, I think that... I mean, I kind of tend to fix those things as I go. Like you can see now, like I try not to leave a lot of paint just kind of hanging around, or a lot of, unblended strokes kind of just hanging around. Partly because I just don't think that I don't think it does me any benefit to have them hanging around. So I try to just keep them out of the process. By the way, I have this overwhelming feeling that we don't have enough distance here. I bet all of you out there at home are like comparing the proportions and laughing hysterically. Yeah, that's all right. The beauty of this is, whatever happens, in a couple hours, I can always scrub the canvas. Yeah, I don't know. I think that in a way, I don't think I think you can actually, it's okay to be a little bit distracted by that, because, that's part of just kind of doing the job of making a painting, is making sure that those things don't hang around. Like I don't like to leave, these big unbroken edges or big kind of broken up edges hanging around in the paintings, because I feel like I find that distracting actually. So in a way, maybe I'm on the other side of that I feel like you should be distracted by those things. I feel like you should get rid of them, because in a way, like, they're not really contributing to creating a good impression in your painting. By the way, if you notice something in the proportions, shout it out. Let me know, because one of the things like about live streams, I wish I could change, would be that I can't really like get up and like go look, at a distance from my work. I'm kind of like tied to the easel a little bit. By the way, is this like scene really dark? Let me go ahead and I'm just gonna like mess with this for a second. Brighten that up a little bit. Is that better? I think that's better. All right. So other questions coming in. Headman Hex says, I can't study in a silent environment. To combat that, I usually put on a song which ends up distracting me. Can anyone please help me? I think ambient music is going to be your vibe, Hexman, because it's sound without real narrative. You know, and I find like that's a difficult balance to strike is how do you have music but then not get like too carried away with the music. I think that's kind of what the struggle you're having is you get a little bit too into it, too excited about it, and then you know it becomes this bit of a distraction, which I think I can kind of relate to. For that, like I said, I eventually started listening to. There's a lot of great like ambient kind of cello music out there. You know, stuff that's I think it's like good music, but it's not really it's not composed for you to be intently listening to it. And so I tend to like go in that direction. Srihari Nandan says, I always remain patient till 70% process, and I also enjoy it. But going further, I grow impatient and try to finish the work, ending up with lots of error. Yeah, I think that part of that is kind of setting a schedule for yourself. Like I usually, with my paintings, I usually set a schedule that I'm going to finish this painting at about 3 layers. If I can't finish it in 3 passes, you know, probably I didn't have the idea really sorted out to kind of begin with. And so that means to me like I needed to either do more studies or I needed to like prepare a little bit better. There's a number of reasons why you know you could have you experience like a little bit of failure in that respect. But rather than trying to like I don't know like find a way to kind of solve that particular painting, I'd probably like just start a new one. Because I mean, why not? You know, unless it's maybe like a school assignment, you know, then you have like some other considerations, like you need to like fulfill, you know, what that assignment is or something, you know, or you kind of for some reason you can't just start over. But otherwise, I'd say just yeah, get over it and like kind of start a new one, start fresh, some fresh enthusiasm. Let's see. Let's see. Jeff Kopsang is asking, I retired after 30 years and I want to devote more time to making art. My main distractions are neighbors who now demand more attention since I'm retired. That's hilarious. So how do you break that to them, right? Like how do you tell your neighbors like I'm busy. Like I'm busy trying to learn how to paint and draw. Yeah, you know, again, like I think a lot of people could relate to that in terms of you know just like family experience and like family dynamics and because it becomes a different kind of priority when you're trying to become a painter. Like it's a totally different story. Your focus is like so inward, and it's not like an activity you can really like share with you know with everybody in the world. I'll say this. I will say this. When I would have family visit, you know, when I was living in Jersey, and you know, I was busier than I am now. Not because I did more stuff, but just because like being in the city, like being in that vicinity of New York, is like it's always like you're just perpetually running around somewhere. I would have them sit for me, so I'd like paint, you know, like a portrait of my sister or something. You know, I just have them say, yeah, like come to the studio. You can like sit for a few hours for a portrait. And you know, a lot of times, you know, I mean that's for me, that's like a very fun, rewarding interaction. And so, you know, they'd never like sat for anybody before, so that was kind of fun for them. And I got a model, and I also got to, yeah, like kind of interact with them on my terms. I got to focus on what I needed to do anyway, and hang out with them. So it's a little bit of I don't want to say killing two birds with one stone, but you know, in a way, it's a matter of kind of solving that equation, that balance with your family. So just tell them that they can hang out with you all that they want, so long as they sit totally still in front of a really nice light source. Let's see. Trigunjoy Majumder is saying, When you're the only son, 19, and your parents are over 60, it's quite hard to keep up with everything while making artworks, although hard work pays off. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like keeping up with life. I find it's funny, you think of distractions and it sounds like we'd say like, oh, well, it's unnecessary things. Like distractions are something that you should just, that shouldn't exist. Well, like you got to grocery shop. You got to do like all this stuff, man. And it takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, right? By the way, paintings aren't getting done without like the energy to get them done. Like it takes a lot of like focus and energy to start a painting out, to finish a painting, to do anything in this process, and believe me, I can attest to that. That it can be like totally exhausting, and if you don't have the juice to like keep going, it's just not going to happen. Like you just can't conjure a painting out of nothing. You have to really be kind of into it and totally involved. So it's supposed to be, I guess, like this relaxing leisure activity, but it's not, is it? It's kind of it's like an all-in type of activity. So it can be really hard to kind of keep up with everything. And I mean, that's another one for me, is like just having the startup energy to get into painting, and I mean, just FYI, like doing a live stream, it's like you got to set up all that other stuff too. So I don't want to complain, but as well, it's like, yeah, it takes that extra energy. We're all kind of economizing our energy, right? We're all kind of trying to spend it where we can, and trying to save it, reserve it where we can. And so I totally feel your pain on that one. That yeah, like just trying to keep up with everything, man. Sometimes too much. By the way, this is like the part of the joy of lead white, is also part of the difficulty of it, is that now that I've got a lot of this stuff kind of blocked in, it's actually kind of hard to get the values to kind of jump up enough. So you really have to kind of build up some paint to do that, which, I mean, if I'd have started on a white canvas, it's a little bit easier maybe to get up to that light. Or maybe if I just chuck some titanium white onto my palette, maybe that's going to give me a solution as well. But that'll be one of the main things that I'm kind of fighting in the second phase of this painting, is actually getting my values up to where they're supposed to go. But we're getting a little bit of head structure in there. A teeny tiny little bit of head structure is happening. So that's reason for encouragement, right? Let's see. Michael Gallo chimes in and says he's a cat person. Reynola Dominguez is a dog person. And Peter Benvenuto Stiegmeyer is saying, listening and making pasta bolognese. I'm not going to make a bolognese, but I'm going to make a ragu this evening, actually, after I get out of here. We've got more cat people. We've got Mira Karuta, who is a mod on my Discord server, is saying that she's a dog person, and she's calling me out specifically as a dog person too. That's later to be revealed, Mira. Dun dun dun. All right, so we have some people that are neither cat nor dog people. One says cats are demons. They're the only cats are demons. Bad Pillow says why not both, which is, I feel like, a really fair question. Why not be a dog and a cat person? MJ Artwork is keeping some receipts about things I've said on other podcasts related to this, so don't read his comment if you don't want to know yet what I am. Oh, Leah Morales she's got the silver bullet of distractions, which is a cell phone and everything on it. Like, real talk, I love my cell phone. I love social media. I love like all that stuff. I'm on board. Is it a distraction? Yep, it definitely is. Yeah, no, I got nothing to say about that, Leah, but you're totally right. It is, and you got to be really kind of responsible about that stuff. Responsible about like kind of how you kind of spend your energy and your time. And I'm no saint. You know what I mean? Like I get plenty distracted by by my phone and by social media. And I mean, I'm only lucky that it's like partly my job, so at least part of the time that I'm distracted, I'm actually doing something practical, which is, just telling people what I'm up to, and this or that, whatever it is that is the content that I put out into the world that day. At least it's part of my job, and I think that's something also to know, about yourself. It's like sometimes knowing your distractions, or knowing the things that really kind of captivate you or take your interest away. A part of that too is like where some of your strengths can lie as well. Like I was so see if I can explain this well at all. Like the school that I studied at and the school that I taught at, right, has this really, really intense philosophy around like working from life. Like for them, working from life is like the holy grail. It's, all you can ever do is work from life. That's the only way to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all this stuff. And, so for years, I just kind of went along with it. And, so I didn't like I was probably one of the later adopters of like having a cell phone, or like anything tech was just, it's not really that world, like it was this really kind of old world type of vibe where you were just supposed to, be into stuff from the 19th century. And if it happened after that, it was not interesting. And so I kind of came from that world, but I always had like this interest. I was always kind of interested in tech, when I was a kid, but I kind of let that get a little bit kind of latent as an adult. And, as soon as I started kind of reconnecting with it, like a whole lot of like creative possibilities like opened up to me, stuff that just I wouldn't have thought of, I wouldn't have done, as a what is called a Luddite, right? Like a person who's afraid of technology. So a lot of that stuff just would have never occurred to me. And because I started embracing that, that's kind of why I'm here today. That's like why, I'm able to be self-employed, and like why I'm able to be an artist, is that kind of I embraced all that stuff. So, for me, like I said, something that maybe I would have considered initially like a distraction that was unnecessary, it's actually something a little bit kind of related to an aptitude that I had, or kind of an interest that I had. My gaze was always kind of pulled over to that direction. And eventually that proved to be a really good thing for me. So don't discount like the things that maybe are in the periphery of your practice as being like totally unnecessary, because they could unlock some like really interesting possibilities for you. That's my take on that. JD Anarchy says, pain is the worst distraction. Trust me, I have rheumatoid arthritis, wow, in every joint, and is not being treated, and it can stop you in the middle of drawing. Yeah, wow. I can only imagine the amount of focus necessary to, like if I have a headache even, I mean, that's like, I'm sure that's nothing in comparison. But if I have a headache even, like I can't go, like I can't do it. And I could only imagine like actually, having some real physical kind of deficit like that. I mean, hats off to you, man, like to even be able to get to the easel and get to work, I'm sure is really, really hard. Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, some comments coming in. Sorab Gurung says, hi, Stephen. If I sign up now to Patreon, will I get access to the 30th of June or till the 1st of June? Will it refund? So, all right, yeah. So if you sign up to Patreon this week, so in the next few days, I'm going to refund your first payment on the 1st of June. And that means, though, that you'll have access straight away. Like, you'll have access right now. So if you went and signed up right now, you'd have access right now. Which, by the way, FYI, the Atelier tier is happening. There's a lot of really great kind of stuff coming up. I put out the first group critique video, actually, earlier this month. And that's still available for everybody to watch. And even if it's not, obviously, your work that's being talked about, if you're following along in the assignment, you're going to be encountering a lot of, similar challenges to everybody else. And that's why the kind of group critique notion works so well, is that we're kind of focusing in that group critique on, the big issues, like the big problems that people face, kind of going through the at the moment through the BARG program, but eventually we're gonna go on like through everything: cast drawing, cast painting. Probably we'll get into figure painting eventually, but that's only time will tell about that. Rosie D is weighing in with all the information. Says she's a cat person, 56, and she thinks that I'm a dog person. Jire Brian Dimalanta says that's so true, but being broke is such a distraction. Being broke is a huge distraction. That's why I said like earlier, embracing that idea that you are a small business owner. I think the earlier that you do that, like as an artist, you're a small business owner, the earlier you do that, the better, just because that means like you're going to figure out a little bit earlier like how to negotiate that challenge, right? Because every artist, and this bothered me so much when I was kind of coming into this profession, is that there's no like one size fits all roadmap. Like everybody does it like a little bit different, just a little bit different. And because of that, I mean, like it can be frustrating, but also, the thing that you should take with you, the joy that you should take with you, is that also means you don't have to be successful in the same way that everybody else is successful, right? Because like for me, I don't think it would ever work for me to be a full-time gallery artist, and I'll tell you why. I just like to spend a lot of time on work, and I like to be able to experiment, and I like to, just do the stuff that I find interesting, and sometimes that means that like my work looks different, and I mean gallery owners, like to a person, would probably tell you like they want work that looks like it's the same like every time with a bit of variation, right? So everybody knows it's you, but it's just a little bit different, so it's fresh. Like that's the ideal gallery work that you're gonna get. And I'm an experimenter. I love to experiment. I love academic stuff. I love subject matter that maybe some people don't even find interesting at all. Like that's maybe only interesting to a handful of people, which is fine. Like those are my people. That's like that's my group. That's who I spend time with on Patreon, is people that kind of just care about similar aspects of drawing and painting. They want to get the technical know-how to do this stuff, and that's who I'm with. So for me, it works so much better to just like find a tribe, out there in the world that was like me, than it was to like try and fit into basically the gallery artist mold, which is not a bad mold. If you're a gallery artist out there and that's your thing, man, fantastic. I think we'd all love to just like make work and sell work, but the reality is that's not going to fit for everybody, and that's the reason why I don't think it fits for me. I'll show here and there, but like I said, I'll never be like, I don't think I'll ever be like a 24/7 gallery artist. It's just not my vibe. Let's see. Lasso says, oh yeah, so I was asking about my palette. It's in the FAQs, folks. Just check the description and it's in there. Madeline Painter says, demographic info, 53, a dog person. She has 3 dogs, apparently. Yeah, and DJ Head Candy's chiming in with one. We all know this, like, but the pressure to sell. The pressure to sell is tough, Like I said, I was talking about this earlier, just saying, like, once that gets in your head, it can be a little bit of a tough thing to kind of negotiate. And it's really so true. And I'm not someone that I feel like, well, let's put it this way. The response that you sometimes hear to that is, we just need to block that out completely, right? Like any commercial thought that you have, you're not allowed to have that. And I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like let's be realistic. There's a commercial aspect of what you do. The thought experiment I like to do with students is to ask them, like, if you had an exhibition, right? What would you want to happen? Would you want A, to have the exhibition and then nothing sells and all the work goes home with you, right? It goes right back to your studio. Or B, would you like to have the exhibition and everything sells and you make a bunch of money that you can then use to help you, keep you in the studio and keep you making paintings? Yeah, obviously this question has a pretty definitive answer. We all want our show to be successful and to help us make money to kind of support our passion and to push our passion forward, right? Great. So yeah, it's a little bit of a commercial endeavor, I mean, part of your job painting is that eventually you would like people to collect your paintings. You'd like them to be so good and to communicate your excitement and your passion so well that people cannot help but want to collect it. Like that's where we want to be. So that's fine. It's a little bit of a commercial endeavor. So what? I don't. I used to think when I was younger, oh, it has to be different or whatever. I don't know. I love to paint and I love to communicate, and I also, love to keep the lights on. So I don't think those things necessarily have to be in conflict with each other. I try to see. I mean, like I said, it can be distracting because if you like, again, you're all the time a gallery artist. That's the only way you're gonna make income. That's pressure. That's a lot of pressure. And sometimes, some people respond really well to pressure, and that's like a really kind of good thing for them. Other people, it can kind of crush their spirit a little bit. And so, yeah, it's just worth telling kind of both sides of that story. So big reveal. That's not a reveal at all. I think that probably my personality, more than anything else, shows this so completely. But I'm a dog person, and you shouldn't be shocked by that. But let's see. Cat Aquarelle says, I just joined and I have to go in 20 minutes. I saw the comments. I'm a Frenchie Bulldog person. I get that, Cat. And let's see. So Henry Josu Peñalosa Ayala says, maybe you don't understand, but eres el mejor. Best wishes from Ecuador. I hope I didn't just say something bad. Let's see. All right. So looking for more comments or questions on distraction, which is the topic today. Let's see. Distraction. Oh, yeah. By the way, folks, if you're checking this out and you think this is decent content, please like and subscribe. Just helps get the video out there to more people, and that's always a good thing for me. So just hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps me out. So I would greatly appreciate it. Let's see. Rosie D says, for me, everything is a distraction because I have ADD. So things that help are exercising, block out time for activities so my brain knows that the email will get done later, and remember to take my meds. This is a really good point too, and something I kind of realized as well is that like there is like a physical aspect to focus, and I've taken up jogging. That's my answer to it. That's my solution. Just because it kind of fits with my personality. Like I kind of like to do it, and I always find that if I get that kind of nervous, unfocused energy out there, like jogging, then like when I come into the studio, I have a little bit of just that much of like a slightly clearer mind, kind of going into my work. And so yeah, I can highly advocate the idea of exercise as being something that kind of puts you in that focused place, or at least like it kind of eliminates some of the things that are actually distracting you, which can be like kind of nervous energy, or just or even just feeling like tired. I usually feel a little bit energized after working out. I mean, I jog, so maybe it's an exaggeration to call it working out, but I think physical activity, I think, is a really good way to actually keep yourself focused, or give yourself the mind space, the head space to stay focused. Let's see. Valerie says, I was told that it is so hard to push yourself to work if you let the dialogue with yourself in. Reason why and why not to work. The trick is to set your time in advance and bypass the dialogue. This is really, really true. I'm a big believer, huge believer in scheduling, right? And again, for like, I know all of you out there, a lot of your online students, setting aside that time is a really big deal. Without that, there's always like a reason or a justification for like why not to do it. It's easy to find like reasons that that you can't focus or that you're not going to focus or whatever. It can be hard sometimes to find those reasons to focus. And so I think taking it out of the hands of improvisation and into a schedule, I mean, I never regret having done that. I'm always on board for getting myself on a schedule about work, just because, again, there's always some reason not to. It's easy to find. The world is like just crawling with reasons to do something else. But if you set aside that time, you just go like, yeah, well, this is it. This is not negotiable. This is my painting time. Then I think you're much more likely to get the time that you actually need. So this painting, as predicted, is in a really meh kind of place. But you know what? I'm just happy I'm here painting instead of doing whatever other like email tasks and stuff that I had to do otherwise. I'm happy to be here, just like chatting and chilling with all of you. And yeah, let me know what your... I'm kind of curious, yeah, as to if anybody out there has some great... I'm sure I'm not the first thinker in the history of thinking to ruminate on the idea of distraction. If you have any great quotes, I'd love to hear them. I'm a terrible quoter. I just forget who it's by, who the name was, and I just paraphrase it. But I'm a great lover of quotes. I love a good quote. So if you got one about distraction, chuck it in the comments and I will read it out here. Let's see. Oh yeah, Danger Days is saying, why don't you transmit on Twitch? Yeah, I have a simulcast account that I can activate. I just never actually bothered to like set up my Twitch. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're right, man. You're right. I should. Let's see. Let's see. Somebody says the ear is too wide. DJ Headcandy is saying the ear is too wide. I think you're right about that. I think that's something I should probably fix. I think like this whole area here is a little bit kind of nebulous, right? It's not really sorted out. So I need to give it maybe a little bit more focus, like at the distances here off. Let's see. Let's see what happens if I cut in some clear edges here. Like, this is the thing, like when you're kind of struggling with the design, it can be really helpful to just like kind of cut in a few harder edges to kind of help you figure out where stuff is supposed to be. Of course, it means you got to like take them away later, but that's just part of the game. Yeah, I would say like my shapes right now are like totally, yeah, I don't know. I think I need some smaller brushes actually. There's like some of the shapes in here I'm kind of fumbling with a little bit. So that'll be my excuse for this looking so average, is that, oh, I didn't have the right size brushes, right? It's the perfect excuse. No excuses. Let's see here. Cat Aquarelle says instrumental music for drawing and painting. No lyrics because they're very distracting. I do get where you're coming from, Kat. I do get where you're coming from in the sense that, you know, music with a narrative, it kind of pulls you along a little bit. And, you know, sometimes that's like its own distraction. You can get too hyped up listening to music sometimes. Like that happens to me. I get a little bit too excited about what I'm listening to, and so, you know, I go further forward, you know, in the painting process, the drawing process, further than I should, just because I'm kind of getting carried away with the music. I'm like jamming out, you know, jazzing out. But yeah. So a good way to do that is to go to instrumental. I find for me it's like always a balance. Like if it's too like non-entity, like I actually focus on the fact that there's nothing going on in the music. Like it's too slow, and I get kind of bored of it actually. And then like I focus on the fact that I'm kind of bored about it. But then of course, like if it's like too overpowering as well, you kind of get a little bit lost in the music. So yeah, finding that good balance is tough. Let's see. Am I even ready to do the mouth? I'm not sure. I think I still like a world of stuff to do up here. I think one of the important things we're doing alla prima is not to like get too shapy. Like if you start kind of leaving around a lot of like really kind of telling or really kind of intense sharp shapes, they kind of build up on you, because at the end of the day, like you're gonna have to get rid of a lot of them. And if there's just like 100 of them in there, you know, it becomes this kind of overwhelming task that you have to like go back and kind of rethink everything, or redo, like just do the hard work of like kind of softening everything out. It can be a little bit of a bummer. So I try to just eliminate them as I go, you know, take away the harsh edges while I'm working, and hopefully that means at the end, like I'm not left with this giant mess of like edges that I need to work on. Let's see. C. George is saying, Stephen, if anything, the angle of the ball of the nose, and maybe you're right about the space between the nose and upper lip. Yeah, I think so. I was talking about earlier about like if you see something that's off in the painting, let me know, because I can barely focus on it. Talking like I am. Let's see. Michael Gallo says, I'm always distracted by how to start and making the setup perfect before I actually get into the drawing or painting. I hear you, Michael. I do hear you, but I almost feel like that's kind of distraction that you want, because it's better to like start out with a good setup than it is to like start out with a really bad one, and then later, of course, later it comes back and it bites you, because you know your setup was all wonky, you know, and so like later you can't focus, right, because it kind of comes back at you. So yeah, a little bit of a double-edged sword there. Like I kind of feel on one level, you know, if you can be prepared and like your setup is great, that's fantastic. Or sorry, like if you can't get a good setup and you just need to like do some work, I think that's cool. But if you can, like optimally, I would say that time you spend on the setup is gonna benefit you a little bit down the road. Yeah. But I totally hear you there. It can be distracting. Angelo Baiocchi says, just because you asked, the chin has to go back. Yeah, that's a fair point. What do we think about that? Yeah, the chin should like align somewhere along here. I've got it a little bit further out. Yeah, let me push that back a little bit more. I don't think she ever had enough chin here, actually. Like, I kind of want to bring this. Bring that down. See if I can pull this off here. Maybe that distance is like a little bit better now. Better than it was anyway, but not to say it was in a good place to start with. By the way, this self-deprecating way that I'm talking about this is not, I'm not fooling around. I'm totally aware that I'm not an alla prima painter. I also know it's not, there have been worse block-ins in the world, but this one is will be one of them. It's just how it is sometimes. But I mean, there was a time where I kind of focused more on painting. I mean, of course, if we call it alla prima, it would really just mean like I'm just kind of painting it in a pass, in one pass, and just letting it be what it is. There's a time when I focused on that more because I thought, oh, well, like to be a professional, like you got to produce so many paintings, you better be like really fast. And to an extent, like that's true. But then I also realized, it's not what I actually really enjoy about paint. I really like taking my time. Like that's what does it for me. That's why kind of one of the reasons I enjoy painting is I can just take my time and do exactly the thing that I wanted to do. And there's nobody to say like, oh, it can't be that way or whatever. So, I mean, eventually that's why I'm not like an alla prima painter per se. But it's nice to kind of jump back into it every now and then, just for fun. Or just if you're totally frustrated with having to answer emails and do tax paperwork all day and you just want to paint because you want to freaking paint. There's another side to that as well. That's my real motivation with alla prima. Right. Let's see. Stephen Lewis is saying, I find with alla prima painting, the already applied won't accept the newer layers. It just mixes with the new layer too much. What do you think is going on? Yeah, it's just the nature of oil paint. You probably need like a more absorbent canvas. Let's see. Look, all right, so Shubham Sharma says, my distractions are all those unfinished works. Yeah. Yeah, Shubham, and then Shubham is saying like, and then he wants to do like a new one. Yeah, I mean, like, listen, I get that. If anybody gets that, I get that. I spent years, you know, starting paintings and not finishing paintings, and I'll tell you that, like, eventually for me, I discovered like that's not. I mean, I can't actually just do that forever, just because I have a career and I have kind of deadlines in a way. So I mean, if you're looking to solve that, that's where I started developing this idea, and I tell my Patreon students about this a lot. Is that I have basically a 3-layer deadline that I set for myself. Like if I can't do the painting in 3 layers, then I really have to start thinking about the justification. Like is it even a good painting? Like, is it a good painting plan that I had, or was my plan like flawed from the beginning, and that's why the painting's not happening? Or do I not understand what I'm doing or whatever? So I try and like set myself a limit to kind of understand what's going on. And if I can't get it by that time, usually I should just probably start something new, because I'd be kind of pouring, I think the saying is like that you're paying good money or spending good money after bad. Like you kind of know, you got to know when to like fold it, right? Or hold, when to hold your cards and when to fold them. That's kind of where I'm at with that, which is, yeah, sometimes you're just better off just letting it go, right? And that's okay. Like sometimes it's okay to just have a painting that you started and then you didn't finish it. That's, whatever. That's life. Just try not to like associate too much guilt with it. I think that's where it, that's where it used to stop me from working, is that I get all these paintings started and then I'd feel like, oh, I don't want to finish them. Like I'm not excited about them. I'm not excited about going to the studio. So I just start to like avoid things. And that's where it becomes like a real distraction, is you can't even like get to the studio because you just feel like, oh, it's this overwhelming burden or this weight, where there should be like, actually there should be kind of excitement, and you should be enthusiastic about going to the studio. um, but that used to really weigh on me a lot, was that feeling of like, oh, I've got to finish all these paintings because they've all been started, but you know uh, but I can't finish them, or like there was always some drama about that. But eventually, like I said, I just started like having a schedule and saying, how many passes have I had? If I don't have it by now, am I really going to get it? Is it going to work out? Or should I just start a new painting anyway? Yeah. Yeah, a couple of people are asking about materials. It's all in the FAQs. I promise it's a free post. Just follow the link in my FAQs and it'll tell you everything you need to know. And a couple of questions coming in about my palette and stuff. Same thing there. Let's see. Somebody's asking if I can make a video on problem solving while drawing and painting. I'm not sure. Let's see. Marbus AAM says, have you ever had no distraction at all, but can't get yourself to draw for whatever reason? Yeah, sure. I mean, there's some times that you just don't have you don't have it in you to like to get up and go to like do it. So it takes a lot of motivation, I think, to draw and paint. Like it's kind of it's not an easy thing to do. It's a very challenging thing to do. And sometimes like if you're not like up for it, there's no real sense in like pushing yourself to do it when you got nothing in the tank. Now that goes a little bit in the face of something I said earlier, which is like I like to keep a schedule. Part of a schedule also exists like around the schedule, which is to say, I exercise and I try and eat right. Maybe I don't have a beer on weeknights and stuff. Like all this is so that I can kind of keep the schedule that I'm trying to keep. It's like nothing in my life is kind of like separated like that, where I can say, oh, I can do this thing, and then it's like happening in a vacuum and it doesn't affect anything. Everything affects everything else. And so part of keeping the schedule is like trying to do all the other things in your life that are necessary to make that schedule viable, And so, for me, exercise was a big one, like figuring out that I needed to get enough exercise to like have the energy to like to work and to be able to sleep right. I mean, for me, I have really like my whole life probably I've struggled with like sleeping. I don't do it very well, which is a funny thing not to be good at. But in any event, eventually, exercise and diet were really everything, or really a big part of what the problem was. And so now, like I just, there's things that I can do and things I can't do, and if I want to keep my schedule, that's what I got to do. So I just encourage you to think about it like that. Like sometimes the reason that you're not able to kind of focus, it can be a simple one. It can be a physical one. That yeah, like you don't have the right body chemistry that day to allow you to focus. I mean that's a real thing. I think actually probably, to be honest, like the physical stuff is like a really unheralded kind of aspect of why people can or can't kind of focus, or can or can't don't have the energy to do stuff. Like a lot of it just has to do with how you're physically feeling and how you're physically like taking care of yourself. And I know that's like such a 40-year-old thing to say, but I don't know, that's where I'm at. So what about this head, huh? I don't know, there's something here. I mean, there's something maybe kind of cool in it. It's not like a total wash. I mean, I wouldn't call it good, but it's not a wash either. There's some kind of interesting stuff happening. How long, actually, how many hours are we in? I don't know. Saturn M says, I get distracted when listening to art podcasts such as Suggested Donation while drawing and end up focusing more on the conversations. I actually get the opposite of that, is that I find I can't listen to like anything like audiobook or anything like that when painting because I'll get into the painting and I'll completely and totally miss anything that's happening in the book. Like I forget actually which book it was. But I had this audiobook that I was intent upon listening to, and I started listening to it while painting, and like it never worked out because I'd always realized like 20 minutes too late. Oh, like I just totally skipped out on this major section that I should have been paying attention to. I have no idea what's happening, no idea like what happened in the last, whatever 5 pages or 15 minutes or whatever it is. And so I just discovered, that is just not a thing that I am able to do. No audiobooks when painting for me. I do love a good audiobook. Do love a good podcast. But I cannot have them when painting. Just doesn't work out. Let's see. Mood 749 is asking, do you count music as a distraction? If so, what does it? I mean, I think I talked a little bit earlier about music. I mean, I wouldn't say that I full on like think of it as a distraction. I mean, it's sometimes it can help you focus. Sometimes it helps me focus. To have like some music on just gets me like kind of excited and kind of ready to go. So I don't think it's entirely one thing or other. I think it's just a matter of kind of person to person kind of stuff. Like if you have a problem like quieting your mind, sometimes music can be great. If you have a difficulty staying focused on one thing, maybe it's not a good thing, but it's person to person. For me, like I said, I listen to music a lot. Like when I'm painting just for myself, like I always have music. I'll say there's one exception. Like if I'm having a lot of trouble on an area, like by the way, everything here. If I'm having trouble on an area, then sometimes I can find music a little bit distracting. But that's how it is. Let's see. The draftsman says it's not about distractions, but do I need to get many connections in the field to reach out as an artist? Oh yeah. So your question isn't about distractions. I can't focus on it. Let's see. Alison Borges says, how do you deal with working off commission? That's not really what you want to do. I have trouble getting through commissions because I'm thinking about art that I want to create. All right. Let me break down something about commissions. And this is kind of my philosophy with them. Take it for what it is. If it works for you, that's great. If it doesn't work for you, that's great too. It's just one way of kind of thinking about things. Now, I charge a little bit more for a commission work than I do for a work that I just make for myself that you happen to want to buy. The reason is basically it's kind of like an eBay principle. Like on eBay, I would not pay the price that I would pay for the item because it's on eBay, because it's used. I will only submit a bid that would make me think, oh, I'm really happy to be like paying that. Like, wow, I got a deal. Great. Now, as I'm in a moment in my career where I do not have to take commissions, I know that the extra labor involved in a commission will bum me out if I'm charging the same amount for that I would for just a work that I was just making on my own, which I would enjoy doing implicitly more. So it's not outrageous. It's not like 10 times the amount or even twice the amount. But I do put a premium on it because I recognize that premium is not there like as a penalty. The premium is there as a motivation, like that I'm going to be happy making this work because I know there's a little bit of a bonus in it for me. Because I'm kind of going out of my way to make this portrait of somebody else. So that's my philosophy about commissions, and like I said, hopefully it helps you, because I know that that's a tough one for everybody, and I realized, or I learned through experience, eventually that yeah, like if you, like, one of the primary factors for me in being bummed out about a commission is that I didn't negotiate the right price, and then I feel like, oh, I'm being underpaid for this, and also it's like really extra challenging because, by the way, it is harder because a commission is a collaborative project. FYI, people, like, it's not just your artwork. uh, there's a client review process that you go through where you send them the work halfway through and you go, so what do you think? Like, this is what I think. What do you think? Is this meeting your expectations? Because at the end of the day, by the way, also, FYI, if you're doing commissions, you should be getting a deposit first that is non-refundable, and you're not going to get paid for the rest of the commission until the delivery of an approved artwork. So, I mean, whatever. Everybody can have different practices, but I'm not saying you have to do it that way. That's how I do it, and I would definitely advise people to not engage in commissions without a deposit, because that's a sure way to kind of erode the trust in the relationship. But you just got to be like upfront with people. You got to be a communicator, and you gotta make sure that they kind of know what's happening at every step of the process, and that includes the very beginning. That includes like when you're kind of starting out to kind of figure out the pose and the lighting and the palette and like all the things about it. It's a collaboration. I've been meaning for a while actually to do a tutorial, like a lesson about commissions for my Patreon subscribers. It's behind, of course, the giant list of all the other lessons that I want to do for those folks. But just FYI, it's on the menu and may eventually happen. Yeah, JD Anarchy says, I get distracted by the want to do more or to do the next drawing. Yeah, that can be like a really powerful motivator. I think over the years, I think my discipline gets stronger about that stuff. And it's more just like a matter of habit and like predictability. Like, you kind of know, okay, I'm going to do this for whatever. This drawing is going to be another 9 hours, then I'm going to be done with it or whatever. And you kind of, that softens a little bit, I think, over the years, that feeling of like wanting to be on to the next thing, or at least you realize like it's a little bit more, or a little bit less, what's the word, kind of losing my focus at the moment, but it's like a little bit less bothersome, I think, as time goes by. I guess that's the shorthand way to kind of say what I'm trying to say. Do we have a head here? Is anything going on in this head? I don't know. I said at the beginning of this, by the way, just full disclosure, I said at the beginning of this painting had every opportunity to be totally meh. And so far, so good on that front. Let's see. All right. Reynola Dominguez says, I walk every couple hours, and while I'm moving, I think about the project that I'm working on. No time lost and perspective gained. It also helps with my peace of mind and expelling nervous energy. Yeah. Staying moving, can be a really good way to sorry, I gotta get another paper towel. I just dropped that one. Keeping moving can be a good way just to, like, keep yourself fresh, keep yourself focused. Maybe not kind of lose yourself too much in the project, which actually, in some ways, there's distraction like inside of a project as well. Like, you can kind of, I think a couple of people were mentioning even this early on in the stream, that you can get distracted by the desire to like do these details or something. and like that's its own kind of world of distraction as well. So let me see if I can get some of this depth in the ear. You know, the trick is, you know, with these faster paintings, is to try not to like overstate something. You don't want to become too descriptive, because at that point you're like setting the bar for description too high. You're not going to be able to meet it in the rest of the painting. So I'm going to see if I can set it just at the right level. Just suggest enough of this for it to work. Let's see. Right, other comments and questions coming in. Nicholas Pomato says, is it distraction or anxiety when you jump through the process of the piece back and forth? Yeah, like I think that it's one of those things where usually that's because maybe some of the needs of an earlier stage. I think what he's talking about is like when you kind of find yourself kind of going back to a block in and then, you know, rushing forward to do the features, and then like you get in this phase of you never feel like you settle into a stage, and the drawing or painting never really gets to progress towards finish. You know, I think that's usually an issue. Maybe less about distraction and more just about like having a really solid process to work in. And if you don't have that, it can be its own kind of distraction when you're drawing. It's like, by the way, it's an interesting topic here, because in a sense, you know, the actual painting or whatever, the drawing, the painting itself has its own level of kind of distraction that it can give, in the sense that if your painting is really chaotic or really disorganized, that can be really distracting. And you know, so I'm always thinking, and by the way, like organization in this context, it generally comes from like knowing what stuff is and where it should be. And so I focus a lot, you know, in my teaching on kind of understanding the stuff that we're looking at, right? Like, what is a light shape? What is a shadow shape? What are the planes of the head? How do we define like value? How do we define color? And it can all seem eventually like, it can all seem like a little bit pedantic, which is to say, like, pedantic is just, you know, kind of overly teachy. But I think the reality is, you know, you need to know these things so that you can kind of see them coming, you know, see them for what they are. And it's not necessarily, you know, that you go around, you know, just defining light shapes or whatever, you know, I mean, you're painting, for goodness sake, but you know what each kind of category is and where everything should be. I think that helps you keep the painting or the drawing organized, and that organization, for me anyway, has always led me to feel a little bit more focused, a little bit more in control. Speaking of, I don't feel terrible about the painting at the moment. I don't feel great about it. I don't feel terrible either. DJ Headcandy says, I work in total silence, so there is room for the errors in the painting to shout out at me. I like that. Mood 749 says, we are the distraction chat. Andrew says, the shadow of the nose is too small. Yeah, maybe so. That's very likely. Let's see. Salubi So says, distraction is the only thing that consoles us for the miseries, and yet itself is the greatest of our miseries, by Blaise Pascal. So that's, yeah, in response to my request for quotes, Salubi So says, distraction is the only thing that consoles us for our miseries, and yet it is the greatest of our miseries. That's kind of fascinating. I wonder, like, if that's kind of contextual, that, like, are we talking there about kind of like which kinds of distractions, like distractions from our life, distractions from our work, you know, I mean, in terms of distractions causing, like, being the greatest kind of cause of misery. I wonder what we're getting onto there. But Nonetheless, a good quote and much appreciated. Okay, let's see. Cat Aquarella is back. That's good. Mr. Wing says, I think the focus and intensity of doing something can be draining emotionally, and there is push to free yourself of such intensity, even when you're creating great work. Let's see, the intensity of doing something can be draining. Yeah, well, yeah, like, I used to find this a lot, that I would, I'd have like a really great, like intense day painting, and then, like I'd be really like hyped up, and eventually like I'd have a couple of beers or a few glasses of wine or something to kind of chill out in the evening. What I found eventually was that like the next day then I wasn't able to get that same level of focus, and I was actually, so that was, I was saying earlier how like I try and kind of do everything in my life to make sure that the scheduling works, that was one of those things I just realized, I just can't, I don't focus the same way, after a night of like having beers or whatever, as I do when I haven't done that. And so it just became this matter of like, what's the priority, and for me, it was like, I wanted to be working. I wanted to be more focused. I wanted to be producing better work. And so it was kind of an easy choice eventually. I mean, not that I don't enjoy a beer. I actually did that. I don't know if what the age of my audience is in general, but there's a thing that this radio broadcaster in the UK was doing, and a lot of people do. I think it's called Dry January, right? So you say like, oh, for the month of January, I'm not gonna have a drink of anything of any kind, just because. I don't know why people do it, but whatever, they do it. And so I thought, well, it's January, my wife and I are in self-isolation. Why don't I just do a dry January? And I have not been able to get back off the wagon or onto the wagon. I haven't been able to like really have a drink since. Like I don't really think of it in the evening, I'm usually kind of doing something else. So like I haven't been able to have a drink since January because I did this dry January thing, and now I'm like stuck being dry, completely dry. So that's my cross to bear. If you have any suggestions about like a great beverage to enjoy, let me know. Limo Art says, I know you painted with gouache and watercolor. Which colors did you use there? My gouache and watercolor is just totally intuitive. I don't even remember actually what my palette would have been. Would have been similar to this, but just different pigments. Pedro Barbosa says, I have a bit of a hard time picking the right brush for the task. There's so many different shapes. How do you know when to use them? In terms of distraction, where I think this fits, is that starting out, I know it can feel like there's maybe a lot of like info that you need to get, to kind of start out. And I'm sort of guilty as well of like, I'm a big kind of materials nerd, so like I mean, any new material, like, yeah, like I'm totally on board with it. Tell me what it is, I'll buy it. I want it. I want to use it. But also like there's a thing for students, just get a pencil and just get some paper, like get what's available around you, and start practicing and focusing, and that will lead to improvement, of course. That being said, I mean, if it really counts, if you're really a professional, then good materials are super important, and I support everybody out there to, or encourage everybody out there to, use the materials that are going to best assist you to like make the artwork that you want to make. But, if you're, like I said, if you're kind of starting out, just get something and get in there and go. So in terms of like what brushes to use and this and that, I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody, mentioned suggested donation earlier. Like I was on that podcast a while back, talking to Ted and Tony, and we were talking about materials and stuff. And Tony was saying like, yeah, he gets workshop students that ask him all the time, like, what brush do I use and what medium and this stuff. And The reality is like those things are not going to make the painting. You know, I mean, they're not going to make you a painter because you have like the right brush. And he was kind of saying, oh yeah, you know, he felt like, you know, it's not that big a deal. And to a certain extent, like, you know, for a beginning student, yeah, maybe that's the case. I do feel, however, as a professional, the materials really matter, and actually, you should be paying attention on what to use. Uh, Although I'll say this, lately in my painting, I've been actually using very few brushes. I used to have like a whole handful of brushes by the end of the day. Nowadays, you know, I use three or four maybe. And that's conscious. Like I wanted to do that because you know, I just I felt kind of felt like there was too much stuff at the beginning and ending of my painting day, and it was distracting me from working. Like, by the way, like cleaning brushes can be such a pain. You know, I mean, I'm sure that there's those of you out there that you don't get that painting day started because you just see, oh, I only have like 2 hours. I'm not gonna get into painting because like 2 hours is nothing for a painting. Like, you can barely get anything done in 2 hours. So I get that too. Cat Aquarelle says artists are super disciplined people. It's a myth that artists are all over the place. Representational artists, for sure. I think if you're going to be a professional representational painter, like you are going to be laser focused on your goals. Really, probably type A personality. And there it varies, sure. Like there are people out there that are definitely not that way. However, I think that in general, especially like the successful ones, I think it's a shared trait that they tend to be like quite well organized people. Just because, you know, this stuff is like kind of so labor intensive, like you kind of need to. Like it would be difficult to kind of get any of this stuff done without actually being quite well organized, you know. So for what it's worth, I totally agree with you there, Kat. I consider myself to be a pretty organized person. Although, looking at this painting, maybe you wouldn't know that. Nathan Gimby says, have we talked about getting distracted from drawing by other drawings? Often when studying a subject, I just end up sketching other subjects that are more fun or in a different, more familiar style or medium. We haven't discussed that yet, but that's open for conversation, I think. I guess, yeah, like you know, when I think of also like kind of drawing and painting, it's so tied to like the studio environment where I kind of learned to do this stuff. So, you know, in a way, like we were working from the model or working from our still life, our subject, our cast or whatever. It's a pretty like highly regimented workspace or work zone. So there wasn't a lot of other things like that to distract. Though I think I kind of understand what you mean. You know, I can get a little bit more distracted now, like my own home studio, than I ever did as a student. So I don't know if this is definitely not a total disaster. This painting. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the stream, I'm not an alla prima painter. Don't expect to make a good alla prima painting, but I think just by being little bit humble about it, I've got a decent head starting out here. You know, you get at least an idea of like kind of the volume of the head. There is some sense of accuracy, but maybe not a tremendous amount. You know, there's not a well, anyway, I could go on and on about what there isn't, but there's some good things happening here. Just giving myself a little pat on the back so I can keep going. You know, self-evaluation doesn't always have to take the shape of like self-criticism. Sometimes you need to like, you know, pat yourself on the back a little bit so you don't feel so bad about what you're doing. I even thought about doing kind of several of these like alla prima live streams just to have a reason to kind of practice painting a little bit faster, because I mean the truth is like what the alla prima painters get really right, is that it takes a long time to paint, and if you can do it faster, chances are, I don't know, maybe if I want to say chances are you're going to do it better, but chances are you're going to do more of it, and the more of it that you do in general, the more you're going to improve. So, you know, the idea, you know, that for students, the idea of doing alla prima, I think can be really useful, because you're just like grinding through like so much painting, you know, and it's so, you're making so many decisions, like so many choices so often, that I think in general it can be really helpful for you. Whereas, you know, like painting something that's going to like take you forever every single time you do it, you know, maybe some of your focus gets a little bit lost on the monotony of the task. Anyway, just a little meditation on alla prima there, of which I am not at all an expert. Let's see. Mithra Nuruodo says, I'm a beginning painter. What daily exercise do you recommend? Paint as much as possible. Let's see. Vishal Ratmele says, hey, Stephen, I know this is not exactly on topic. I got to stay on topic. Let's see. The FAQ link is not working. My bad, folks. So apparently the FAQ link in my description here is not working correctly. I will fix that afterwards. That probably means the other links are not working as well. No, the other links are working. Okay. Yeah, by the way, like I said, if you wanted to at some point like paint along with this, you can get this a high res of this image for free, just by following the link in the description there. So it goes to my Patreon page where you can see the live stream post, but also you can just grab the download as well, and you can have that to kind of paint along with, or you can just paint along with the one on the screen here. Whatever suits your level of interest, it's fine. Like I said, this live stream for me was my like kind of protest against the day that I'm having, where it was just nothing but distractions, one after another, all keeping me away from anything that I wanted to do. And so I thought I can either let the distractions win, if that's a thing, or I can just double down and like just cut out and do a live stream and enjoy myself. Yeah, oh wow, this name is really tough to pronounce. Let's see. Miss Anna Liege says, do you work on multiple projects at the same time, so when you come back you have new energy to focus? I do, but sometimes it kind of cuts both ways. That sometimes it means I have new energy to focus, and sometimes it means I kind of fall out of love with a project. So in that sense, I guess like my excitement or my passion gets a little bit distracted. I'm sure we can all kind of relate to that a little bit, where like you've done a project, you started it out, and you know you're all guns blazing, you know, and you were just ready to roll, and you set it aside for a while, and you come back to it and you just go like, I'm not really like in love with that idea anymore. Like that's definitely happened to me many times, and it's something I try to stay pretty conscious about, actually, and it's one of the reasons why like I try to do a ton of projects at once. Like if I have a ton of projects going, it's actually a sign or a signal that I'm very distracted, because it means I'm not finishing the ones that I'm meaning to finish, which again is a little bit of a problem. And so like I kind of take that as a signal of like, all right, whoa, you need to like slow down. You need to get your discipline on and like make sure that you're gonna finish what you start. Which oddly enough actually is a problem that I'm in right now. I have kind of several projects going that aren't necessarily in that getting finished kind of zone. So that's a problem. I mean, I view it as a problem. You know, it doesn't have to be for everybody, but for me, like I look at that and I go, not good. Yeah. All right, let's see. Let's see. Richard Kershaw says, "Hi, Stephen. I'm wondering if the self-portrait, either drawing or painting, can be one of the subjects which can be included in the new Atelier program." Eventually, yeah, the Atelier tier, you know, it's a kind of a long form project that I'm doing on Patreon where I'm kind of trying to distill all of the projects that I taught at the Atelier that I worked at for many years into the kind of digital world. And that's going to take like a long time, but also, you know, one of the projects to the end actually is a self-portrait that you go through the process of like doing a self-portrait. And you know, I think that's a good territory to kind of aim for, but it will be also like a while into the future. Yeah. Next up, by the way, is the Belvedere torso. So if you've ever had curiosity about Barg or doing Barg drawings and stuff, we're getting into that one on June 1st. So definitely show up if you've got interest in academic training or atelier training. It's going to be a really good month. We're going to try and make this project, the Belvedere torso, something that is digestible and learnable and actionable, which is going to be a really intense kind of drawing boot camp type of experience. So for all you patrons, I'll see you there. If you're not yet a patron, I mean, it's $10 a month. So if you ever wanted to learn to draw, it's not a bad vibe on Patreon. Let's see. Cat Aquarel's got a good take here. It says, I think the distractions can be good sometimes, like nice distractions. It's okay to live a little too, and when you come back, you'll feel more inspired. By the way, it's really true that sometimes you just need to like take a step back because you're not really focusing all that well, you know? Like it's kind of that thing where your desire to be focused outweighs your ability to focus. And so you're there, you know, but there's a saying in Norway, right, that you're just putting your shoes in, which means basically that you're just like being there to be there. You're not being there with any sense of purpose. You're just like a, you know, just hanging out basically. And I think that can happen for sure, you know, when you're working, is that you can kind of lose that vital energy, you know. And as you know, like in painting as a professional, and this is another thing, like just another professional note for all of you out there, you know, there's no halfway work in painting. Like either you make a really good painting or you kind of make something nobody wants, which is not to say like this is not so much about students, because obviously showing up and doing the work is just really important. It's not always going to come out the way you want it to. But in the professional world, you know, making a halfway painting, you know, is not really an outcome. You know, very often, like only the superlative paintings are the ones that will sell. And so you need to focus on making consistently really good paintings. So taking that break when you're working ineffectively is a good way to ensure that you're not just making paintings to like fill the space, but you're making ones that are, you know, focused and useful, and yeah, eventually collectible. Let's see. Stuart Nash says, oof, man, I've been here for a couple hours already. Gotta be, right? Distractions such as video games hold their power over us through manipulation of the dopamine reward pathways in our brains. See Alex Becker's channel. Humans are not adapted to dealing with technology. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in the sense that yeah, like we have, yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to kind of the whole like physical aspect of distraction. Like, if you're not getting your kind of dopamine firing from something else, which for me, like I said, like I actually find jogging to be really good. Like it really, like I feel really satisfied after jogging, and that makes me feel a lot easier in terms of, or makes me feel like it's a lot easier to actually focus on what I'm doing, because I'm quite satisfied about it. So, yeah, dopamine, right? Sorry, I just got to paint this set of lips here, or they're never going to get painted. And it's really challenging. As I'm sure it looks challenging. Let's see. Mark says, well, I guess it's kind of distraction related. Mark says, yep, what's changed between 100,000 years ago and now isn't us as a species, aside from some minor changes, but the methods we have access to satisfy our evolutionary urges. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's getting deep, but I get it. Let's see. Yeah, Jira Di Malanta says something I was mentioning earlier about like that feeling of maybe you don't start up because you kind of start thinking about all the cleanup that you have to do afterwards. He says we all wish we didn't have to clean up after painting. Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a pain, but it kind of just comes with the territory. You got to do it. I found actually though, oddly enough, I don't even use any spirits or turpentine or anything to clean up anymore either. If you know my my like recommended materials and stuff, you'll know that I don't actually use any solvents when I paint. And now it's kind of moved to I don't even use any solvents when I clean up. I find that like a good oil soap actually does more than enough of the job of like taking the oils and the pigments out of the brushes, and so I just clean up with that now. I don't bother at all with any kind of solvent, which feels great. By the way, like I couldn't be happier to not be using solvents in my process. It's just, I mean, I do this again as a professional, so I've been at it for a lot of years, and you don't want to spend a lot of years around like caustic fumes and things. Like that's a bad recipe. Let's see. Now, I knew that this painting wasn't going to get everywhere, but we got somewhere. I think I got a little bit more time. I'm going to chuck into it and see what happens. Sweaty Palm says, yes, about distractions. I had a kidney transplant last year. And after the transplant, I was excited, started painting again, but because of the anti-rejections meds, my body is adjusting. It slows me down. Yeah, it's again, it's such a major thing, and also I think you notice it more when your body is a little bit like in flux. Like I had a bit of like back pain recently, so I mentioned I like jogging, right? So I did this one jog where I was jogging actually, like a lot of it was actually downhill jogging, which, I mean, if you're not a jogger, this doesn't matter to you. You don't even think about it. But when you're jogging downhill, like you're kind of falling just a little bit further each time. And that extra impact really, like the day after, my back was just, I mean, I couldn't do anything. I mean, if you've ever had like proper back pain, like you know what I'm talking about, that you it's just like whatever you thought you were gonna do is canceled. Like I couldn't like sit in a chair properly, you know. I mean, it's that kind of pain, and so yeah, like people that are going through stuff that's you know this is like sustained like kind of painful. I mean, I couldn't imagine like the amount of focus it would take to still be able to do anything productive when you're in that level of pain. So I feel you. I feel you. I mean, obviously, I mean, I don't know it. I mean, I've, like I said, I've had some ailments, but you know, eventually I've been able to kind of just get on by. Let's see. Victor Rodolfo says it's 11:40 a.m. here, and I haven't had breakfast yet. I skipped eating because sometimes I feel like it is a distraction. Do you feel like the same? It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, I do find that there are times when you're so dialed in. Like, that's actually a signal to me that I know I'm like all the way in on a painting. Is that I get like annoyed that I have to eat. I'm like, oh my, it's just stupid body that needs fuel. Like I'd rather be, you know, here kind of focusing, but no, I have to go like make a sandwich or something. Like that's when you know you're really dialed in. When you're like annoyed by something like having to have a cup of tea and a sandwich. So maybe that's like a good thing, you know, to look at it that way. That that you're so focused that even the things that are pleasurable in life, like having a snack, seem mundane by comparison. Sorry, just some brush strokes I need to hit here. I mean, hey, we're not going to arrive really at something amazing here, but there's a little bit of something happening, and I want to do it justice before I totally scrub the canvas as soon as this live stream stops. I probably will, to be honest with you. I probably will. But sometimes that's fine. Like, you know, it's like a bit of a sand mandala. You know, you just do it and then feel satisfied and you go on to the next thing. Yeah. All right, more about distractions. Let's see. Luis Chisholm Art says, I get distracted by too many art styles. I never seem to know where I want to take my work, but then I get frustrated if it doesn't go the way I wanted. Will this change with time and practice? Yeah, like I know that feeling that you're talking about too. Especially, I mean, you know, talking about the internet age, right? Like it's so, you're exposed to so many different, like fascinating painters, and each one is like totally amazing for a different reason, and you can feel like a little bit pulled towards one kind of aesthetic or other. And I don't know. I mean, I talk a lot before also about like mood boards and things and different tools that I use to try and kind of focus myself on what I actually want. But it's really one of those things where you kind of need to like really know yourself and know where you want to go. Like I don't think there's like a mindfulness tool or a thought exercise or something that does it. It's kind of just an accumulation of attention and focus and sensitivity to like what it is that you actually like. Which I mean, I know that that sounds like, oh, shouldn't we all just know what we like instinctively? I'll just say, I'll just to add to that, like I didn't. You know, it took me a lot of time of kind of meditation and not well, not like you know Om type of meditation, but just reflection and study to kind of understand what I actually like about artwork or like about a particular genre of art. And those are the things that I think eventually Those are the things that are your center. Those are the things that really focus you and let you know what you like and what you don't like. But you have to learn it. You know, it's like taste acquisition, I think, is the description of it. What's actually happening is that you're figuring out what you do and don't like, and that requires experimentation. It requires testing. It requires exposure. So all those things are like an important part uh, of the process of like figuring out like who you are as an artist, what you like as an artist. You know, figuring out your identity, I guess. Yeah. I think that we must have been at this for a couple hours. I would be shocked if we had not. And I think that I've got to. I think I got to wrap it up. Uh, as a revolt against distraction, I think it was successful. I feel better. I hope all of you out there feel better. Um, or was I the distraction today? That's like the meta version of this, is that you were actually doing something useful and I've come through with a live stream and distracted you. But I do appreciate all of you coming to hang out and sharing your thoughts and listening to mine about distraction. And hopefully I will announce the next live stream earlier. But like I said, don't forget June 3rd, we've got the Atelier tier, or sorry, June 1st, we've got the Atelier tier, the second installment of it. We're going to be drawing the Belvedere torso. If you ever wanted to figure that stuff out, now is the time. And in addition to that, if you want this source image and you want to kind of work along with this at another time, or you just want to check out what's on Patreon, you can follow the link in the description of this video and you can get this download 100% free. Like I said, thank you guys so much. Please remember to like and subscribe to the video, and I'll see you around next time.